Hey, do you guys? So official. Okay, well, I just want to welcome everyone to our sales tax or capital improvement sales tax citizen committee. By charter or by council, we are supposed to meet twice as a group, a minimum, once in April and once in May. And then we will have a presentation to council in June. And we have the next two meetings already scheduled, and I shared that, and hopefully everyone got that. And if you didn't, let me know and we'll send it out again. But just want to make sure that you have those dates kind of penciled in. And we do have some new members this evening, and I'd like to just kind of go around and have everyone just introduce yourself and tell what committee or board you're currently on, and if not, a citizen. So we'll go ahead and start with Jason.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason Henderson. I'm part of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Patrick Santana, Planning Commission.
Julie Radulovich, citizen rep.
And then I'll go. I'm Brent Soderlund. I'm the interim director of Public Works and Utilities.
And I'm Tiffany Hooten, the finance director.
I'm Joseph Ames on Arts and Cultural Commission.
Ricky Jackson, Next Generation Advisory Board.
Mike Jent, Deputy City Manager.
And we do have two members who are not here right now, John Jones, who is a committee member, and then Corey Reitz, which is with South Metro Housing Options. All right, so some of you may be wondering what this group is, and a few of you will likely remember from last year. But this committee was formed by council, and the specific goal of this group is to review our expenditures that we've had in the previous year and have you discuss that, look at our ballot language. Yes.
Oh, great. Mind introducing yourself too? Sure. James Brown. Might have to reintroduce yourself. Sorry.
My name is Jake Spratt. I'm on the South Metro Housing Options.
Okay, so
Thank you.
you are here in visit Corey then, right?
Correct. And Corey was happy to have somebody. Yeah.
All right, well, just so you are aware, we are recording this meeting and it'll be posted on our webpage, just like other meetings that we have at the city. So again, the reason for this group is to look at our expenditures related to our 3A sales tax increase that we had in 2021. Compare that to what is allowed or recommended or required from the ballot language of that sales tax increase, and really kind of report back to council to let them know if you feel that the expenditures are in line with the ballot question, if there's any exceptions that you want them to be aware of, any recommendations that you would like to share with council. And so that's really kind of the goal of this committee. I do have copies of the memo that was presented to council last year, just for reference. I did not include it in the packet, but I'll certainly send it out electronically as well, just so you have that as a reference. Last year, we didn't have very many expenditures. I believe it was about 139,000 or so. It was our first year of collections. We had a lot of plans for our first year of collections, but we also needed to have staff internally get some projects going. We had a lot of grants that were in works, and I'm happy to share that we did have over $5 million of expenditure in 2023, which is not as much as we had intended. I think we had budgeted for about 17 million, but I do feel like the city is making tremendous progress in using those 3A funds. Just so you know, we do have a separate fund within the financial statements of the city so that we do track all the revenues that go into that fund, and we track all the expenditures that are coming out of that fund. I did provide a lot of information in the packet. I wanted to provide some language of the specific ballot question from 2021 so that you can always reference that. And then just the charter and the action plan for this committee. Do we have any initial questions? I sometimes feel like I talk fast, so if you want me to slow down or stop, just please share that with me. But are there any questions overall about kind of the purpose of the committee, the information that we'll be talking about, or anything like that?
You're tracking very clearly so far.
Okay.
This is great. Yeah.
All right. Well, the bulk of the packet that we have before us this evening is really related to the financial information. I will also preface this in saying that all of this information is unaudited. We are currently going through our audit here at the site. So there's a potential that things might change just depending on if there's any adjustments that we find and we still need to make. But I'm fairly confident that the expenditures that you see this evening are pretty accurate. I provided a balance sheet which just indicates a few things, the assets that the fund has, so cash on hand, any accounts receivable related to sales tax payments that we didn't receive in 2023, but we will receive in 2024. And then we also provided, or also on the balance sheet is any liabilities. Whenever you have expenditures, some of those you pay in the following year, and so you have to book those back to the previous year as an expenditure. And we also have some accounts payable and a few other liabilities. And then fund balance. And for me, the fund balance is important for you to understand as well. And really fund balance is what is the balance at the end of 2023 that we have for future years. And so I just want to highlight the fund balance. I mentioned that we had planned on spending about 17 million and we only spent about 5. And we also had some expenditures or fund balance from the previous year as well. And so the fund balance at the end of 2023 is about 17.7 million. So again, this is in a separate fund. It will remain in that fund and it will be carried forward for use of other projects in future years. Are there any questions on the balance sheet? I will say the due to, due from other funds is cash. We use a pooling method of cash here at the city, but that's essentially the cash that's in that fund at the end. Hi, John, we're gonna put you on spot.
Okay.
If you wanna just introduce yourself to the group.
Sure. John Jones, I joined the group last year, so I'm the community members. I lived in the Littleton area since 2018. Colorado, moved to Colorado in 2005, moved away a few years. And my wife works just right around the corner. I work for EchoStar Dish.
Cool.
And just so you know, we are recording this, so it'll be on the website for people too. We really just kind of started and kind of gave an overview of what the committee's purpose is, and we're just starting with the balance sheet. All right, so the next sheets that you have in here it's called an available budget. And so this is the budget for the sales tax fund, and I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Page 9, no, interrupt all the way. Page 9 is where I'm at. I'm small on the packet there. So think of this as an income statement. So this just reflects the revenues for the year, and then it reflects the expenditures for the year, and then our net income, if you will. So for revenues for 2023, we received, it's kind of in the middle, that year-to-date actual column. So you can see our total revenue for 2023 was about $12.4 million. That includes our retail sales tax, our general use tax, our motor vehicle tax, building use tax, and interest earnings. So a total of about $12.4 million. And then there's a detail of all of the expenditures. And the way that we group them here at the city is we group them by department. So if you were to turn to page 10, you can kind of see that Public Works is the main department for this fund. And so you're going to see administration, you're going to see engineering, street maintenance, ground maintenance, transportation, and then a couple of transfers out. And this is just a line item budget. This is the way we're required to report our budget and reflect our budget. And kind of by type of expenditure. So salaries, professional consulting, capital, but kind of gives you just really an overview of the income statement. So again, revenues and expenditures, and then the net income, and surplus or deficit. And you can see in 2023, it was a surplus of about 7.5 million. So that means we receive 7.5 million more in than we spent.
Can I have a question? So on page 9, the revenue section, so are these revenue income elements in addition to 3A, or are things like building permits considered a 3A revenue source?
Yeah, building use tax. So all of the taxes that are here were included in the ballot question. So the 0.75%, the additional
Added to those fees.
0.75% was
Okay.
added to each of those
So
different.
this is just the
types.
0.75% on building permits. Okay.
Yeah, and it's building use tax, but it is applied on a building permit. So it's a portion of a building permit. There's other permit fees and tap fees and impact fees that have a different fund that those revenues go into. This is the 0.75%.
I knew that we had those other taxes. And I was like, is this those? It's folded in or it's?
No, this is just the 0.75. So I'm kind of gonna jump to page 13. And what I tried to do, and certainly open to feedback or suggestions from this group, what I tried to do is take our total expenditures that we spent in 2023 and kind of sort them by project. I felt like sorting them by project would give you a little more information on what project it was spent on, what type of expenditure. And so the expenditure total here, the 4.9, almost 5 million, matches the available budget report exactly. So it's just a different representation of our expenditures. And like I mentioned, we had several more projects in 2023 than 2022. And so this is really where I feel this group probably wants to kind of focus on and talking about these projects. And Brent is here to kind of help guide us through any questions related to those projects. I have detailed information of invoices or anything else that we might have during this discussion. But Brent is really familiar with all of these projects, and I think between the two of us, we can certainly answer any questions you have. I did sort the expenditure listing by category, and this category kind of matches a 5-year plan that we share with council every year. Just the main categories: the infrastructure, conservation and grounds, public safety, internal service, facilities, capital maintenance, building construction. And then on the next page is debt service and overhead. And so I think right now is where I'm just gonna pause and kind of see if you have any overarching questions or anything. And I think what I'd like to do is just kind of walk through some of these projects. I'm familiar with them, and if you have any questions, that'd be a great time for you to see what they are.
I just started reviewing this. this
I know,
afternoon, so
I know.
I don't have many questions for you.
No, that's fine, and I'm happy to meet anytime you want to as well.
Could we jump back to your statement on page 11 and talk a little bit about the original budget versus where you landed, like, for example, in the building, see a pretty big delta there. So does that mean we did less than what we planned to do, or did buildings not require as much maintenance, or what?
I think it's a combination of several things. Clearly, we're well below our budget that we had expected. I think a lot of things are, a lot of our projects that are budgeted out of this fund have multiple funding sources, and so they could be grant related. So we might be paying a portion from this fund and a portion from another, and depending on where we are in the process of that project, we may not have started it yet. And that's probably going to be the main reason why we didn't spend as much as we did, especially in the street maintenance area and engineering and some of those other public works related. We just have a number of large projects, $2 million, $3 million, $6 million, $10 million projects that we just haven't started yet.
Okay.
And so that's the main reason why we didn't spend as much. There are some areas like building maintenance where, due to limitations of staff or just sheer capacity in the public works or facilities area, they just weren't able to get to as many projects either. And so those again will likely come online in 2024 or a future year. And then there's just some areas that we just didn't spend it. And there might have been a different reason. Maybe plans changed, maybe we had anticipated on spending it, but looking at the project again, maybe 6 months later, it just wasn't a project we wanted to tackle or a project that we wanted to or needed any longer. Maybe there was a differing factor as to why we didn't need that project. But yeah, there's a lot of.
And I'll add on to that. Last year was really difficult, I think, in Public Works, just because of the amount, the heavy spring rains. We focused a lot of our stuff on the culvert replacements and stuff, and that didn't end up being 3A money, right? We're gonna be reimbursed from FEMA for a lot of that work. And so our focus was shifted on those emergency projects, so we probably didn't get as much street maintenance, that kind of stuff done.
Yeah. So again, capacity was a huge contributing factor, I think, in 2023.
So one of the things I'm thinking about here is, you know, coming into this year, we were thinking about 17 million. Now we're sitting at about 17 million coming into this year, this coming year. And we've got about 34.5 million planned. I guess my only thought is whenever, kind of as a citizen, it's like, are we gonna start spending this money? I guess from my thought is, kind of what do you guys think? I know it just depends on what happens right in the world, but, you know, do you guys think when you're looking at this 34 million, a big chunk of that may be spent this year?
I think we're gonna spend way more than we did last year, right?
We will.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know
if we did the
downtown
34
is,
million, but
yeah. But I know like the biggest thing I think people wanna, like a lot of people hear about probably is the street maintenance thing. And so, I guess if we're looking at that, are we thinking we're probably gonna be spending a chunk of change there?
Yeah, and I think we're ahead of schedule already this year. If you've noticed, we're already in Aberdeen Village.
Yep.
Doing a lot of the mill and overlay there and a lot of reconstruction of streets. And so that was a project that was supposed to be done last year that got pushed to this year. So we're ahead of schedule as far as trying to get all the street maintenance done this year.
And then with the Public Works building, is that gonna kick off this year, you guys think, or?
Yeah, so we just hired a new facilities manager. I think she's been for like a month. And she's actually doing a great job. We just started doing, it's just the space planning. She's been interviewing, her and a consultant have been interviewing staff to see how much space we need at the Bellevue Service Center. And then once we do that, then we'll go into doing an RFP to probably, well, we'll see how we do it. It could be, maybe we'll hire a contractor that'll then hire an architect, right? So it's
Okay,
kind of a,
so do space study, then hire a
Yeah,
contractor to be kind
right.
of CM and then do the designs and then
exactly.
pull the trigger, okay.
Yeah.
Brenda, pardon my ignorance on this. What is the plan to rebuild the building or build a new building next to it?
Well, so I don't know if you've been on the service center, but where a lot of our operational employees are at, those buildings were built in 1948. They're like big tin warehouses, right? And they're, it's not a great place, it's not a great work environment, right? Kind of our plan is that this space study, we're hoping that we can find space on the site to actually build a new maintenance building for everybody and then tear those two older buildings down and hopefully it all works out, but that's kind of where we're at.
So along with assessing how much space they need, it's also what kinds of space they need, those kind of things. But, and he mentioned the maintenance and work areas, but also for administration and whatnot. Right now, we have Public Works split up over multiple sites, so consolidating them and
Consolidated them all in the new building. So they'll all be consolidated into the new services building.
That's a possibility, yeah.
That might be a goal.
Exactly. And then one other facility that's over there, and again outdated, is a Quonset hut from World War II. Police uses it for property evidence storage. They also rent off-site storage. They also have property evidence here at this facility. So perhaps, as part of that whole plan, there could be lots of efficiencies and effectiveness gained as we reimagine what that campus might look like.
in Public Works might vacate the Geneva Village in, or, it's a possibility.
Lodge,
The
yeah.
lodge.
And that's more than a possibility. We actually received a grant that part of what we told them is that we will relocate our employees out of that facility and it'll be available for more community events.
I saw in here that there was two $6 million budgeted outlays for the building construction of that, plus overhead for the architects and stuff. Those were just numbers roughly estimated. Where did those numbers come from? Why 6 million in 1 year and 6 million the next?
Well, and to be fair, that's just like a starting point, right? So that might
You
cover
expect it to be
the
higher.
design of the facilities. So design of the facilities could be 10 to 15%. And the cost of those facilities might be tens of millions of dollars, so that, 12 million might be 10%, maybe 15% of the overall project.
$120 million.
We've made it work over there for 75 years. We make the most of what we have for sure.
But those numbers were just, the $6 million set aside, were just rough
They were-
guesses at what it
yeah,
might
They were,
need.
they were rough estimates probably a year or two ago, and inflation has been through the roof the last couple of years. And so I do think those numbers are gonna change, but until we have the design and we know what it's gonna look like, then we can't really get a better estimate than that. So we have 13 million kind of programmed in over 2 years. And the thought process was we would start it mid-year 1 year and finish it mid-year the second year. So that's why you see that split. But I would venture to guess that these numbers are probably gonna be anywhere from 10, maybe even 20% higher at least. Just when we get the final design and know what we're actually gonna be building.
How big is the building roughly?
What's that?
How big is the building? I don't know. the square
We
footage.
have the combined square footage. You know what, the next meeting I could bring how many buildings there are and the combined square footages, share that.
There's like 6 total buildings, I think, on that premise, 6 or 7.
East.
East, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it all office or?
No,
Industrial
no.
flex?
Yeah, we park snowplows inside. We have salt building,
Salt barn, you got fleet maintenance in there.
Yeah, fleet maintenance.
All industrial.
Not all, because there is some office building too, but it's a, every, from the Quonset hut I talked about. Are you familiar with Quonset huts?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, from that to a partially, admin.
Yeah, and the other project that we have that's a really large project out of this fund is the downtown streetscape area. So we have 10 million programmed in currently. And again, until we know exactly what that's gonna look like, we don't have an exact estimate yet, but we wanted to at least program in some sort of funding so that we can get that project going to be ready for that. And we're going through that right now.
Right, and some of you may have attended the downtown meetings last week. I think there's 3 concepts they shared with the public, and I'm not sure where we're at exactly as I'm picking one, but
Next Tuesday,
The 20th.
council will see those concepts.
So then we'll get a little more direction on, hopefully we'll get a little more direction on what the downtown area could look like so that we can start refining our numbers.
So once they have that concept done and we know what the design is that when we're gonna schedule Denver Water to come through and start ripping out mains or?
that's a whole separate discussion.
Okay.
I can go
I'm just
into
curious
some
of
detail
timing
if
or,
you'd
you
like.
know.
Yeah, so Denver Water, I just kind of got up to speed on this a few days ago. They actually have 8-inch water main that is on the south side of the street through the parking area. And I think it's just that 4 blocks. So there may be an opportunity to just have them go because it's not as big of a project as we maybe anticipated in the past.
Okay, so they're not gonna have to come to all the buildings and,
Well, I mean, they'll still have to bring all the service lines in, but an 8-inch line is not such a big deal to replace. Water lines are standard 4.5 feet deep, right? And then you'll basically have to run a service line to each of the buildings. But gosh, you could probably get that done in a couple months.
Is it,
Do they do it
And
in
you could phase it, right?
yeah,
And then we could come back in and do whatever a concept is that we decide for downtown.
yeah, I wasn't sure if it was kind of one of those things where if we could rip it all up, we might as well just get everything else done and just one shot it.
Yeah, and part of our restriction is that we really only want to build in Q1 and Q2 of the years because we want the downtown to be open
The
during the
summer.
summer and the fall. And
Understood.
so that is kind of restricting that whole process for us,
So maybe that might be moving into 25 then potentially, right?
possibly.
It also sounds like the trenching to take out the 8-inch pipe might leave an entire travel lane or two open on the other side. It would be full street. I always thought the water line might have run down the center.
Yeah, that's what I envisioned too.
Lifting of the whole
It's
asphalt.
on the south side of the street and then
On the south.
area pretty much, so we haven't even talked about phasing or how we would do that with Denver Water. I've done a few downtown projects and, you know, normally we would close off 2 blocks at a time, right? And that kind of speeds up the whole process, but we'll see. I guess we haven't had a discussion with Denver Water about phasing, so
And they're not gonna increase the pipe's diameter beyond 8 inches.
I think it's just old.
Replacement. The capacity is good enough at 8.
Is it on this side of, I remember which street is which?
It's on Main,
It's on Main and then the other one is
Alamo.
Alamo? Okay,
Yeah, so it's on Main.
I'm sorry. It's like, you know, when Lincoln and Broadway.
Yeah, I know.
Just go down. I know. Okay.
So yeah, those are the 2 largest projects that we have over in DN. We also have been discussing at the city on issuing some debt. And so if you look at our 5-year plan, you can see some debt proceeds. And, you know, the intention is to use those debt proceeds to tackle the downtown and the public works buildings 2 and 3 in that campus area. So depending on the timing of the 2 projects, we likely will be issuing some debt for those projects and probably a few others along with that. Just so we can tackle more things immediately and not have to wait and debt is healthy, right? There is a such thing as healthy debt, and I think it's time for us to have some healthy debt here at the city to get some of these projects done and spend some of that sales tax money.
Is that only supported by the 3A pledge?
Yes, it would. Yeah, and there's gonna be some restrictions on reserves and such, so that'll have to come into play as well, but I think we'll have to talk about that whenever we start issuing that debt. Yeah, but it'll be pledged solely by sales tax revenues.
And they're only modeling a $30 million net proceed off $5 million year revenue.
What?
How about what's the,
We did a 10-year, we did a $30 million at a 10 years, kind of what we're thinking.
okay. Oh, it's not a straight bond, it's,
No, but,
what's the asset, the collateral behind the COP?
I'm not sure exactly. I think it's about 5 million, that's what I'm thinking.
But there's a lease somewhere that's supporting the COP payments.
No, it comes straight out of here. And, well, we would collateralize the asset that we're looking to.
The fleet maintenance facility.
Facilities, yeah. We did a similar debt issue COP for our courthouse and our museum. Yeah. it'd be very
When you look at these 2 big projects and some of the comments that were made regarding efficiencies, can you walk us through what the return? On the downtown piece, it seems relatively straightforward, the return. But help us understand like how you guys think about the return on a project like that versus the building.
on what type of project? Town?
Yeah, I mean, there's a healthy drive in tourism. and the
Oh,
benefits
yeah.
that Go along with that and stuff. Tell us what, like, if we done any analysis on that, is it baked into your financials in any way? The same for the building?
No, we haven't plugged in any like additional revenue that we intend from restructuring our building in the downtown area. I wouldn't do that until we actually go forward with the project and get it started, and then we could potentially, it's really hard to determine what that draw is or what that additional
Certainly.
revenue is. But I've worked with our economic development. Maybe provide some sort of calculation on that piece. Everyone else is gonna bring more people to downtown if it's, you know, there's beautification and easily travel and you can get through and walkability, all of that hopefully will draw more sales tax dollars to downtown.
I think that's a pretty easy one, at least for me to get my mind around.
Yeah.
The buildings though is not.
Yeah, the buildings are more about safety, honestly, for our employees and our staff. They were built in the 1940s. Very much throughout the years, just because we've had constraints here on maintenance enhancements on all of our buildings. We had limited resources, and so, you know, every dollar, we had to put it as far as we could. And now that we have the 3A money, that is the purpose, is to help tackle some of those maintenance that have been delayed over the last decades. But for that area, it's more about safety for our employees and making sure that they have a safe environment and a safe area to do what they need to do for the community.
Yeah, so anecdotally, the newest building over there is the Fleet Building. That was built because it collapsed during the heavy snowstorm in the early 2000s, right? And so that's the best building we have over there. And the rest of them are in pretty shoddy shape, I would say, so.
And we've done the best we could to keep them updated and maintained, but with limited sources over the last, 30, 40, 50 years, we just weren't able to get it to where we wanted to be. That was always one of the plans when we were talking with citizens and council and the community is, we really want our employees to have an area where they can thrive and feel safe and ensure that, they have an environment that's conducive to.
We don't have a set path yet, so we're still very much looking at the exploration of this, but when you evaluate like asbestos removal and those kind of things to be able to reconfigure, and then even if we did everything we could do with these, you still have everybody split up on different sites and different things. So there's real opportunity not only to improve and enhance the safety of the team, but to really become more efficient and effective, just a better overall team.
Really the energy efficiencies and.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine?
Fleet and, efficiency and work, and how you guys flow your equipment maintenance and.
Right. Snowplows that can't get out if the power's out.
Right.
Can't open, and that's not a great formula for a high-level service to our community.
Yeah.
So where does the money, maybe back just a little bit. So I'm seeing these environments that I'm working in where you say you're gonna save $500,000 in efficiencies, you're gonna save $500,000, you write the company check, you're gonna find a way to do it. Where does the money go that you would get from efficiencies? Does it go back here or does it go to the larger?
It would go to it would go to where, like, if it's electricity or gas or those
Yeah.
efficiencies, that is paid out of the general fund. And so it would be a potential cost savings to the general fund, which would free up some of those funds to help another program or enhance a program we currently have, or maybe use it in a different area, but those are paid out of the general fund.
The landscape irrigation, where have you guys been doing that work at?
They've been doing a lot of work on mineral,
Okay.
and they've also done some work on bowls. I mean, what they've really been doing is upgrading most of the controllers.
Okay. With the street pieces, I know a year or two ago, they were talking about a lot about the mass bulk buying of the new street signals and such like that. The street stuff, we kind of with traffic signals, stuff like that,
Right, and
being
so-
upgraded.
So Platte Canyon and Mineral and Platte Canyon and Bowls, those are new signals. There's also Bowls and Woodfield. And there's another street on Bowls, the neighborhoods with all the fences that we also new signal in. I think it's Bell or something. So, yeah, we've got new signals in and that was paid out.
I'm assuming you guys are kind of spending based on kind of like what needs to get replaced, the greatest need.
Yeah, so
Things
I
start.
mean, a lot of those signal poles are pretty old and
Yeah.
they weren't up to standard, so if you drive on Bowls and Platte Canyon, you'll see those new signals in.
I haven't seen the one at Rapp Street in Santa Fe that just corrosion.
Oh, yes.
That you guys had to have the truck there with the.
Is Evergreen paying for their portion of the quad road as part of their site plan?
Yes, yeah. Part of our match is coming up later.
Yeah, there's a portion that's coming out of 3A. It's programmed in 2024.
This question was, is Evergreen developed? I want to know if Evergreen was paying for that, like signal controls and street.
They have a portion, and so does Toll Brothers.
So what is what of the quad road is being financed out of the 3A fund? Is there anything?
There is some. I don't know that I have the number, but I can certainly follow up.
It is like 1.9. I was just curious what. I thought that most of that was being paid off under the new development. Is there a residual piece of it that the city's picking up through the 3A fund?
So the total project cost for that is around 27 million. I think the developers, between the two of them, are contributing 3.65 million. And then, I think our tip grant was around 12, then I think I have it here somewhere. So, and then there is our contribution, our local match for the rest of it, so.
But
I don't know if that all adds up, but.
There's 27 million, we got 12.9 in TIF,
In federal, right?
federal, and then
6.5-ish.
3.65 million out of the developers, that's 16.
Yeah, about 10 and a half.
11, 10 and a half, 11 short. Is the rest coming out of 3A money and city, how is that gonna be closed, that gap?
I don't have like I said, I don't have the total list with me, but that identifies all the communities, but
There is a gap that's still unidentified. Brent and several of our team members are gonna be meeting with Colorado Department of Transportation tomorrow.
That's right.
To try to get them to pay their share. The greatest benefit, well, there are some reasons to hope for that. Including the fact that it's, a state highway. And the greatest benefit will go to the people that are on Santa Fe. Or some of the greatest benefits will go to people who don't live in Littleton. And then also it is adjacent to, transit, right? And so those are priorities for the state. And so really, we do have high expectations that
They should.
they'll pay their share.
They will.
We've had some preliminary discussions that lead us to believe that meeting will be productive.
Is there any Dr. Cog money for that intersection?
Yeah, that's what the 12.6 is. That's tip money from Dr. Cog, yeah.
Okay, that's not, okay. I thought that was just federal.
So right now, the city match is 5.7 million. And then total and Evergreen is 3.
And Dr. Cog doesn't actually have revenues, like federal funds that come through them, yeah.
It's not a separate. I guess what the question I was driving at is there going to be a funding shortfall that the voters would have anticipated provided by the 3A funds, since it was sort of highlighted in the ballot language?
Oh, it falls under that general category of that first line item, right? Major street maintenance and reconstruction in neighborhoods and significant corridors, and then mineral and sanitation.
Yeah, I don't know if we've identified the missing 5 million yet on where that'll come from. So I do want to correct myself. So the developers are actually contributing 4.65 million.
I don't think we have identified the gap yet. That's.
No, we have, we know that we have a gap. We just haven't identified how we're gonna fund the gap.
Yeah. And are you thinking there's a gap if CDOT comes through with their anticipated share, or is that potentially part of that?
Yeah, we don't think, so the gap exists primarily because of inflation. And so we think that they should pay their share of the inflation, which would do the gap, it shouldn't all be on us. And so some portion of it, perhaps, it's uncertain at this point until we actually, come to an agreement. But, if you're asking our team, we believe they should fill the entire gap. We already have significant skin in the game through 3A and whatnot. Yeah.
And you were asking about the ballot question. So the ballot question wasn't specific to any particular projects in general. So I think what Julia was referring to, just it kind of being covered with that major street maintenance or reconstruction, that kind of covers it.
Yeah, it's not binding on anything.
Yes.
It's, but I do think it was written in a way that entice folks to solve particular problems. So I think there might be some citizen pushback if gap, if Mineral and Santa Fe intersection was specifically identified as a example project and there's still a gap. That might be frustrating. You know, no, this isn't like these are the projects we're going.
This, stuff that you guys, these key projects, the summary, I know we talked about this before. Do we have that for these projects?
No, not
We discussed?
exact, yeah, no, not exactly.
Yeah, I just have to print it off, but.
But, yeah, no, we didn't include any specifics on these projects, but I will say that we are working on an internal capital committee, within the city. That we will be, the plan for the capital committee is inclusive of staff from every department, and the plan is to kind of have a 5 and 10 year plan to council on an annual basis at least, to show what those projects are planned for the next 5 to 10 years, with more detail on designs and construction costs and ongoing maintenance costs and such. But we're working on that internally, so that we can provide that information.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see this one pager
Yeah.
that encompasses everything that's being discussed. I mean, it looks like a scenario where you guys have a lot of great information. You're sharing it with us. We just don't have it in front of us on a
Right.
one pager, you know, if there's
Yeah.
something like this.
Yeah, we have a system called Planet that kind of houses all of our construction projects and building maintenance projects right now. And so that's what we're gonna build off of, because it can do a one pager. It just kind of summarizes all funding sources and expenditures. But we're working on that internally.
And the other thing we're working on, and it'll be a while, is we're working on kind of a public facing for our capital improvement projects. So say you have a question, you can just go to the website and look at the project. We're just kind of kicking it off. I would, it'll be by the end of the year, but that's something we want to have up so that we can answer these kind of questions easily.
And I know that was one of the recommendations from this group last year, is communicating these projects that we're doing. And so we did contract with the communications group to help get information out there. And so they've been doing a lot of efforts in that area. And this is, in addition to that, is having that dashboard and the capital committee to just provide the information.
I think like where I get most of my information is from that Littleton report, so I think it's nice to see kind of like, here's what's happening. I feel like that's helpful to see what's going on around town, especially for those projects that maybe aren't as visible, like the facilities piece. You know, and I'm not on mineral a ton, so I'm like, I don't, you know, don't see
Right,
that,
exactly.
but I think that's good, but I guess kind of my overall comments, like when I'm looking at this, you know, just in anticipation for what we gotta present. I like the fact that we are spending money in different places, so it's not all kind of like in one bucket. So we're working on different stuff. You know, I think it's kind of understandable that some of it's pushing based on when funding's coming in and capacity. I think it's good that we're seeing, you know, but there's gonna be a big chunk probably coming in here in the next 2 years with streets. I think it's good to hear that streets are gonna continue to be a priority. Downtown, we see movement on that. Public works, that's good too. I think, you know, when I look at the ballot language of what the funds are gonna be utilized for, looking through here, I don't see anything that causes me concern. So I'd be kind of curious to get, I think that's kind of a big thing that we have to report on back to the council. So I'd be curious if anybody has any concerns they see on this.
Well, Tiffany, you, Jim and you presented a couple of weeks ago at council about shifting money for the pedestrian safety, and there was like 2.9 million for fast build. I don't see those aren't reflected yet in this document.
This is 2023.
Yeah.
This is last year, but
Yeah.
there's a budget for 2024. Are those line items added into the 2024 budget?
So
How
the
does that
2024
intersect?
budget information that you have was when we prepared the budget in October, November, December of last year. So that was pre
Mhm.
bike
Okay.
and ped.
So there'll be
And
an
so
update.
we have a revised one that we'll be sharing with council that includes that 2.3 million for the fast track on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. And so how we identified the sources of funding for the 2.3 million is About half of that came from excess revenue. So our revenues came in higher in 2023 than we anticipated.
3A or general fund?
3A, all of this is 3A.
Okay.
So that is the majority of what is going to be funding that 2.3 million. And then I talked about some projects that just weren't needed or we didn't have to do, or maybe we pushed them out and kind of programmed them in to future revenue estimates since they increased because our base increased. So that covers the majority of the rest of that 2.3 million. But it's not reflected in the budget you have here, just because that was the original budget.
I see.
Yeah.
But it will be updated before this
It
goes
will
to
be.
council?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and council has already approved that budget amendment. They approved it in April, I believe it was. So we're already working.
Great. I had a question. Do we get free water for things like watering the medians, or do we pay Denver
Oh.
water? No.
Why, yes,
Back to
you
Bill.
do.
No, I got my own water. But I mean, you're doing Julie mentioned that the medians, irrigation systems. I mean, Arapahoe County's been replacing all their medians with no water plants, zero escape. And we're adding sprinklers. Do we get free water for those? Because they're saving $100,000 a year in Arapahoe County now. The water bills are huge for those kind of projects. So I wondered if we thought about maybe just zero escaping them instead of.
Well, I would say that the water's not free.
Okay, so some department pays for the water. Okay, that's too bad.
And we are trying to go to more, I guess, less water intensive landscaping in the medians. So over time, you'll see, and our irrigation system is super old. So as we upgrade, it'll get more efficient. So I would think we would see water savings in the future.
But have we talked about doing a similar thing where we just try and reduce the water bill to zero for medians?
I mean, I think if it's practical to do xeriscaping, that's what we're doing, right? I know we did it on Broadway several years ago where we put in brick and some concrete medians rather than having plants and trees. So I know we are making efforts in that area.
Is that something that your department just decides, or does council, how do these decisions get made?
Council establishes policy. Certainly our departments give recommendations, right? And as a, traffic safety advocate, we know that there are real traffic safety benefits to having, narrow sight lines. So landscape medians provide us, slow cars down, right?
Yeah, but plantings can be obstructions visually. So
So
I'm not saying we have to get rid of the medians, but
appropriately landscaped. You're
we want
right.
to keep them low.
Appropriately landscaped. So where there's no left turns and there's a straightaway, having a visual obstruction can help, narrow the field of vision for a driver, and it's proven to slow them down. Not every driver, some drivers can ignore a lot of things, but overall, most drivers slow down when you narrow their field of vision. So when you have those brick medians, you feel like you can see forever, and subconsciously you drive a little faster. So the point of what do we recommend? Well, we recommend what's best for the specific application. And then council does give us policy direction saying this is what we want to do. So we do have a general council direction to try to find ways to reduce water consumption. And not eliminate water consumption, but reduce water consumption, to have smart irrigation, those kind of things.
And one thing, I guess there's a project that'll be coming up in the future over on Mineral and what is it? Over by the hospital. There's some medians in there that we want to replace, but we want to actually use them as water quality features. So that'll be a way to reduce irrigation totally probably out of that median, right?
There'll be catchments
Yeah.
for water.
And that particular road over there floods a lot when we get heavy rains, and so it'll be kind of an integrated design where we try to use the medians for, stormwater detention and try to reduce the flooding over there. So we are trying to be creative in that way.
It'll be interesting to see what the Environmental Stewardship Committee's recommendations say for that. But I think that the less plumbing we do in the middle of the roadway, the less cost we'll have long-term.
Yeah.
It's expensive. These systems have to be checked on, maintained, turned off, blown out.
Payment to have water run.
This is like, Maybe we should be moving away. I don't know who makes those decisions.
But like Project Downtown, you know, one of the things that has been most vocal from the stakeholders is we want trees back.
Need a canopy if we're gonna walk.
That's a whole different.
Illuminating landscape is always going to happen.
I'm all for watering the trees. And, I was just wondering how these decisions get made, what council's awareness of it was, and what are the thinking we might have. I mean, we may have a different recommendation after this environmental stewardship board comes forward with its discussions, but all of these, there's a lot of great ideas and ways to treat them. I would say just that medians are really, they take up a lot of room out of the roadway, and we're in a community conversation about how our roads should serve all the different users. Wider sidewalks would be nice, bike lanes would be nice, and sometimes that means medians are collapsed or removed, so you have those spaces. And big investments in median work, whether it's plumbing, resurfacing, brick detailing, little fencing, that's a big investment in something we may be undoing when we do a corridor redesign. So was wondering.
Yeah, there's a right application for all these treatments, and we try to be judicious of it. And you're not wrong about, you know, looking at cross sections and how to.
I'm just a big believer in, like, with medians, not putting plumbing in them. I mean, in San Diego, we were always struggling with the trees dying and the signage going out and the plumbing lines broken, and it's just like, less is more on those things for costs.
For Bellevue, between University and what is it, Holly over there? Where they redid that median and put in some really cool looking xeriscape stuff. Did Denver Botanic Gardens help them with that? And is that something that?
Yeah, Denver Botanic Gardens is a great partner for us.
Yeah.
And they do help us with our plant choice and whatnot. Of course, we have our own in-house, you know, forestry as well, but yeah, no, they're great partners. In fact, the director, I don't think, what, executive director, whatever the title is.
Yeah,
he
Brian.
was there, right?
Yeah.
So he's vested and he wants to see us
Yeah.
use his concepts.
Yeah, no, because I think, weren't we using a concept downtown? Or something like that a while back. That's fine. But yeah, I just, you don't think that much about medians until you're talking about safety and then, building in more capacity. So, yeah.
I had another question, on page 9, the information technology expenditure $1 million. Information technology isn't something I would have thought would be a topic. Just what was that?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, we did last year, yeah.
One of the ones that you would
Like,
did a voter really think that they would be picking up a bill for IT with this particular area?
I'm fine. I just wondered what it was. I'm
So looking at moving it away from this into a larger budget.
taking it to the general fund.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah, there was a portion that council did support, I remember correctly, that, I think it was about the 550,000 or so that they did support, and so council said, yes, we support using 3A money for that particular program, but it was very limited compared to what we had anticipated. We originally had asked for council for another $1 million related to our ERP implementation and our ERP system, and council Enterprise Resource Planning System, so our financial and HR systems.
Okay.
And council did not support that. And so we had to come back and figure out a different funding source for that additional $1 million we were looking for. So there were some particular specific IT related items that council did support, but some of the other state didn't, and for that very reason. So I think we're more aware of IT. We plan on spending it out of 3A going forward.
It sounded like they were more towards like hardware and things like security systems.
Security, yes,
Stuff, safety and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
related to security or
Tangible, I guess, things, right?
Yeah, it was more, they didn't want computers. It wasn't intended for it to pay for computers and things of that nature.
And dovetailing on that, what were the capital vehicles that we required for $250,000? What was that?
So we didn't spend those. I don't
So it
believe
was
so.
budgeted but not actually spent. Is that all? How is that at 3A? Or how was that 5? Page 9, 10, top of page 10, bottom of page 9.
So if I remember correctly, the title of the account is capital vehicles, but it was more towards capital enhancements or improvements in the police department. So I think it's just a title of that number 1750 that we use in our current system, our financial system. So it wasn't
It
related.
wouldn't necessarily be vehicles, it could have.
No, it wasn't vehicles. It was,
It's not a capital extension.
it was like, it was safety related vehicle or safety related enhancements for the police department. But we didn't spend any of that in 2023.
Thank you.
I'm gonna focus this back on page 13 of the project list. Just so we can kind of walk through these. I know you've had several of these, so we'll talk a little bit about some of these. Brent, I don't know if you want to kind of just go through, just kind of explain what some of these are.
Yeah, I can give just a brief summary of like each of the projects. So just starting with the street capital stuff. So the 2023 street reconstruction design services, that had a lot to do with Aberdeen and some of the mill overlay projects that we did. A lot of places, the asphalt had deteriorated so much that we needed to do reconstruction. So we hired geotech firms and some engineering firms to help us design, I guess, the reconstruction of the road. The next one, Princeton Church, that was for purchase of right-of-way, temporary construction easement, I believe from RTD. And then 2015 and 2016, Platte Canyon and Mineral Boulevard. So that was handicap ramp improvements and then also traffic signal upgrades. Aberdeen Village, Aberdeen Village. We did do part of it last year and then we're doing the rest this year. The mill and overlay, that was mostly the mill and overlay and the Happy Homes subdivision. Mineral Station West Mobility Project. That's a project that'll be building improvements through the RTD lot so people can get to the Mary Carter Greenway Trail. And then Aberdeen Village Drainage Improvements. I think that one's kind of self-explanatory. We did some new inlets and some new pipe there. Main Street sidewalk repairs. When we did remove the trees, there was a lot of tree wells that we had to put new sidewalk in for. That was most of that. See right away for County Line. So County Line, we're actually doing a project with Douglas County and Centennial, I believe, right? And that one, there's a 2-lane section on County Line. It'll be widened to 4 lanes basically. And so that was an expenditure for right away.
And that cost is being shared between the 3 partners as well.
Yeah, and for 2024 for that one, just so you know, there's a $2 million contribution from us towards that project. And then we did buy some message boards just to help with our own streets crews when they're doing projects and stuff to let the public know to watch out for them. I'm not sure what the miscellaneous purchases were, but
They were very small.
There's only $300.
yeah, it was $314. Not sure what that is.
It was likely something that I couldn't identify what project it was specifically related to, so.
I missed, what is the city mill and overlay?
So that's when we come into a subdivision and a mill is something that'll take like 2 inches of the street surface off. And then you follow back in with 2 inches of new asphalt.
This is just over different parts of the city, it wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, mostly that one was in Happy Homes.
Happy
So
Homes.
that's the subdivision on the west side of Santa Fe, north of Bulls. It's kind of an older subdivision over there. So if you drive through there, you can tell
That's where
they
most
got,
of that was done. over there.
yeah,
Yeah, I know what a mill and overlay is, I just wondered where.
yeah.
With Aberdeen Village, you know, I'm looking at the 2022 state of affairs there. We don't put sidewalks in when we do these street reconstructions and engineering?
Well, it has been a preference from a lot of those neighbors not to put sidewalks in, so. And the asphalt is so bad that, you know, we really need to address it.
And the road width there doesn't really support, you know, but what we've been told from several neighbors that it's really important to them not to add sidewalks.
Yeah, it's kind of got that country feel to it, right?
Yeah, a little bit, little bit different, and, you know, I live pretty close to there, and, I see more people walking in that neighborhood than I do in neighborhoods with well-defined sidewalks.
That may be the case, but I mean, I think that we really do need to have a city policy about sidewalks, because people in a wheelchair or that may want to walk, it's anecdotal, you know, we had a lot of neighbors say they don't want a sidewalk, but the person who lives disabled, the house isn't out there saying anything, and so we don't have a sidewalk for them.
It's a different conversation, but it goes back to the whole right treatment at the right place. So there are places where we need to add sidewalks, where there's gaps, you know, and Aberdeen Village would, you know, at least at this point, heavily say that their neighborhood's not one of those gaps.
Let's see, the last one's a communications program, and Tiffany talked a little bit about this, but there's, on our website, there's a webpage called Big Things Littleton, and that shares most of what was going on with the 3A projects. Broadway corridor study, so that's it's another jurisdictional study between us, Inglewood, Centennial, and Douglas County, I believe, to study, you know, what the future of Broadway will look like. And then we kind of talked about our county line local match. Talked a little bit about the irrigation replacements that we did. And the fleet fund, Tiffany, was that for the police department, the 550?
So that was seed funding to help. One of the things that you were talking about vehicles earlier. So one of the things that has always been identified is that we've never replaced our vehicles when we should. It's really, there's a lot of vehicles that have been delayed in replacement. You know, we have a replacement schedule in our fleet, but because of funding constraints, you know, we were holding on to vehicles 5, 7, 10 years past their prime, if you will. And so one of the things we identified is this kind of backlog of replacing our vehicles. And so 3A included money, and it was intended to include money to help seed and fund our fleet fund so that we can build it back up to where it needs to be and get back on that replacement schedule. So that's what that was, is transferring that vehicle fleet funding to the fleet fund.
So I guess facilities, we're down to Bellevue Service Center, repairs and maintenance. So we did some concrete repairs over there, and then in the admin building, there was some HVAC work that happened over there. Fire alarm system upgrades. We did upgrades in the courthouse, the library, and in the town hall art center. And then AutoCAD is just a program that our facilities uses for plans, for drawing plans or for reading plans. And then we also had some architectural services to do some of these upgrades. Roof repairs and replacements. We did the courthouse and the museum last year. And then building automated systems. We did the museum, the courthouse, and the city center. And so those are just computer programs to kind of help us control the temperature, that kind of stuff within the buildings. And then the last item is furniture and fixtures. So $27,000 worth of furniture and fixtures in this building.
Well, one thing that stands out to me, listening to your comments in that latter part, you know, talking about the bigger spend, you know, in buildings and stuff. It's really easy to get confused when you're just looking at these numbers and not recognize it. We did some work on the library. And perhaps, you know, there's something we can highlight, you know, about that. That we're not just talking about putting maintenance dollars into something that's going to be replaced. You know, it's these other facilities that you're maintaining, you know, that people use all the time. It's easy to connect with the library, obviously, and other places.
That's a good point.
I like that idea of labeling things so that the citizen can sort of instantly identify what they're looking at. Makes sense.
I think it would help too. I don't know if a lot of citizens understand the number of buildings that we own as a city. I think it's more than 35 buildings in total that we own. Town Hall Art Center is one of them. We own it, but Town Hall Art Center uses the building for their particular purposes, but we do own the building, and so we do have to maintain it. Library, museum, Bemis House, Geneva Village, Geneva Lodge, there's a number of buildings, so I like that idea of just kind of highlighting some of the other locations that people may not see, just looking at them.
Yeah, if you can put some things together and then whenever we go meet with city council, you know, even though they all know it, we can repeat it and
Yeah.
others can hear it.
I mean, Tiffany and Brent, you mentioned the courthouse. I didn't even know the courthouse was our responsibility.
It is, yeah.
It's not a county maintained property at all.
No, the
County has their
council,
own courthouse.
Yeah.
Up there, but I mean,
it used to be a Arapahoe County courthouse, and then they gifted it to the city of Littleton.
you get to the courthouse in the
Yeah.
list to put the library. I mean, that's like,
But
we're
when they
taking
gifted
care of
it
that.
to us, it needed a lot of work, and so that was when we issued COPs to help refurb it, about $2.3 million, which will actually be paid off this year. I'm really excited. So 25 years we've been paying on the courthouse for that gift that we received from Arapahoe County. But yeah, it is our building. We own it, and
That's why we're putting in the automated system there, not anybody else.
yeah. There are a couple other things on the other page, page 14. We kind of talked about downtown area and some of the plans we're doing there. Is there anything? I think it's just designing that.
Yeah, it's the design that we've been doing for downtown.
And then the last one is overhead. So overhead has been, there's been a number of discussions about overhead out of 3A. And one thing that I always want to just remind people is, you know, when you have $5, $10, $15 million of projects, you need staff to help manage those projects and make sure that they happen. And we had a number of conversations with council, and council has identified and supported a certain percentage of our total capital projects to be used for overhead allocation. And in 2023, I believe we had a budget of about 963,000 or so that council had supported. We didn't do all the projects and we didn't spend all the money. So of course we weren't planning on using all of that, but we did use 459,000 of that overhead for 2023. And I just wanted to kind of give a recap of the types of positions or employees that are being funded from 3A. And so we had a project manager who was funded full-time out of this fund in 2023. And she's managing a lot of these projects and helping Public Works, and so certainly falls under the purview of 3A. We also had 4 positions that were a 50-50 split. And so we identified that about half of their time is spent on 3A related projects and half of their time is spent on other capital projects for the entire city with a different funding source. And so we had a senior engineer, a transportation engineering manager, a senior transportation planner, and a CIP manager that were 50% funded out of 3A in 2023. So just wanted to share that with you, that we did use overhead. Those are the positions in our eyes, and from our perspective, they are directly related to 3A projects in one way or another. And that's why we identified those positions to be paid out of 2023 3A money.
It's a little less than 10% of the expenditures, and I think it would be disingenuous for somebody to pretend that that's not
Real.
necessary, right?
Yeah.
You know, so.
So let me understand, just to make sure I follow it. The gap between what we thought and where we needed. So we spoke to those that are, but what's the other, is that overhead only accounted for if project is done, or other things on that? So-
Either that, or maybe we had a position identified that was vacant. Had a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
vacancies in Public Works too. And so that could be part of it. Maybe we had identified certain positions that we were going to allocate, but based on the actual job duties or what they were working on, it really didn't fall under 3A. And we didn't allocate them, or a project hadn't started and so that person wasn't allocated either, who was managing that project. Does that kind of help? I think there's a number of reasons why.
CFO says that she's okay,
Yeah, no, I think the big thing with any type of grant, especially the federal grants, I mean, everybody's got to code their time and justify what they're doing and where they're working, and kind of like public accounting, you charge your time every hour, every quarter hour to what you're doing. So I think it makes sense. I think the 10% is kind of in line with what you see with a lot of grants. It's actually, a lot of times you might see anywhere near 15 to 20%, depending on the grant, but I know kind of federal guidelines try to stay within 10 to 15%. So I think back to your comment about reasonableness, I think the fact that you guys can specifically identify who, you know, who's doing what and kind of those positions working on specific projects is good, instead of, you know, we're paying for half of public works, you know, so I feel like that's, makes sense to me.
Yeah, and in 2024, in talking with council was supportive of increasing that percentage. 10% is about where I feel comfortable for the city, for an overhead allocation. Council was supportive of, I believe we landed at, it was either 15 or 17% in 2024, just because we knew we had the downtown project coming in, the building 2 and 3, and those are very labor intensive when it comes to project management. And council was supportive of that. And it's really just up to us to identify who, why, and how are they being allocated.
The focus too, like if you have other grant funding sources, then the focus is to push that, kind of use that money first, right? As you can, and then have 3A funding and et cetera. Is that how you guys kind of try to approach it?
Yeah, and a number of our grants, one of the things when you apply for at least a federal grant, you have to identify upfront what percentage you are going to use of that grant for overhead. And we haven't ever done that here in Littleton. We want to use federal money for the construction, for the design, specifically for that project. And so the city has identified that, hey, we're not gonna use the grant money to cover this overhead, so we have to identify a source to cover that overhead. And so this is part of it. And the reason for that, there's some school of thought. One school of thought is, if you use some of the federal funding for overhead, you can't use it towards the project itself. And so they kind of take it off the top. And like I said, we'd rather just use the federal money for the projects themselves. And sometimes you can have negotiated rates with the federal government. You can go through an internal allocation process with them that takes about 2-3 years to identify, okay, for every project you can do 10 or 15%. But again, it comes out of the federal funds. It's not on top of. And so we always have to be aware of that too. Yeah. All right. Are there any other specific questions on projects? Is there anything you want to dive into, or some burning questions at this moment, or I just kind of talk about what is in the packet?
I think if you want to tell the story, you're like, here's what we would have paid if we got no. You know, these projects that we have in here, another, someone in on, you know, what would that have cost us? And then grants were dollars, and other was, you know, whatever. Tell a good story around that, and let's go after it was really good.
Okay. Yeah, I will say typically a federal grant is an 80-20 split. So the grant we for 80%, and we're responsible for 20%. So we're talking about that $12 million grant we have. Well, we have a 20% match that we have to meet for that grant. That we have multiple funding sources that could come from, depending on the type of project. It could come from 3A. It could come from our capital projects fund, which has very limited funding, essentially building use tax, which fluctuates every year. We have transportation impact fees that we have impact fees that we currently charge on development. So that's another source depending on the type of project. And then we have, what's another one? Oh, we have, open space funds that we could potentially use as a match. We have conservation trust funds that we could potentially use as a match. So yeah, just so you know, there's always multiple sources. And, you know, general fund is not for capital, that's for operations, that's to maintain police, that's to maintain library, museum, administrative services, and it's these other funds that we kind of parse out a little bit to help fund a full project. So for example, you could have a $10 million project, 2 million might come from 3A, 1 million might come from transfer for impact fees, 500,000 might come from the capital fund, and then there's a grant. There could be multiple.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm just looking for a bullet point
Yeah.
that the average citizen doesn't know,
Sure.
you know, that we can retrieve.
Is the strategic plan, is that a staff document? Has council signed off on that, or is it just forward looking?
What page would you?
Yeah, which one's that?
Very last page.
Very,
Year
very
one, you're
last.
looking at?
Page 26.
Oh, 26.
It's 26.
Oh,
Very
our
last
5-year
page.
plan, okay.
Very last.
Way over.
Strategic.
Skipping.
Which one are you referring to?
I'm on page 26. It says 2022 through 2031 strategic plan.
Maybe I need my glasses.
Yes, it's small print. It's very small print.
Oh, for the whole thing, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's colorful.
The title, I call it the
Oh,
colorful.
I don't have color.
Yeah. You see the colorful spreadsheet, I know what you're doing with that. Okay, so this is kind of, I keep referring to a 5 and 10-year plan, that's what this is. And so just identifying what we plan to do in the next 5-10 years. Was,
Is that an internal document? Has council weighed in on this, or is this just sort of for staff purposes?
no, this is included in our budget document, so our 2023 and our 2024 budget document has a strategic plan and we update it every year. It's one of our discussions whenever we do our budget session with council in September. That's really when we kind of look at these categories and what the plan is. And I keep talking about the internal capital committee. And so that's gonna be the responsibility of the internal capital committee to not only have the categories, but to identify the projects within each category and how much each project is planned to be spent. So that's the one thing that we're working on internally. But yes, this is a public document. It's in our budget documents.
I should know this, but I don't. When does 3A sunset?
It does not.
Tiffany, it seems to me that like just on this page, if you're gonna do the 10-year out projections or 6 to 8 years from now, the downtown under debt service, downtown phase 1 construction. In instances that probably wanna list some additional years out of that, no?
Yeah,
That's a
again,
very big, potentially very big capital outlay, more than 10 million, I would think.
again.
If we're gonna spend 15, 20 million on the building for,
Yeah.
this is equal to that probably. So I just think that we should probably start laying in those numbers, so budgets 27 through 31 have some kind of figure laid out.
Yeah.
Cause this is artificially lower, I think, in those, I think 26 and 27, when those downtown really gets the work done, those numbers are gonna be much bigger than
Yeah, it
zero.
depends on the timing too, right?
Yeah, we don't know the years, but
Yeah.
all of these are somewhat speculative, right? So
They are.
I just think we should be inclusive of those numbers. So we have a better sense of the costs
Yeah.
picture on the horizon. If we're gonna just be kind of strategic planning on that.
So yeah, the other sections in the packet that you have is, I just provided our 2023 budget information from our budget document and also the 20. So your reference, you can kind of see the comparison.
What pages of that?
It starts on, so the 2023 budget information is on page 15, 16, and 17, and then 2024 is 24 through the end. And that really was just more information to kind of see It's for 2024, or it was for 2030. And this doesn't include the 2.3 million.
Are we gonna have that updated for the next meeting?
Yeah, I can bring an updated one. Yeah, we're gonna share some information with council, I believe so. All right, well, I know this is a lot of information and this is our first meeting and haven't seen each other in a while. So just a couple of comments or observations. So again, the intention of this committee is to review the expenditures, do they align with the ballot question, and then prepare a memo to council. And like I mentioned, I brought copies from last year and I can send it out just so you can kind of see what that looks like. And I know we had a volunteer last year who kind of worked on the memo and drafted it and kind of took some comments from this meeting last year and drafted up kind of some thoughts on what you might put in that memo or what you might put in that memo. And so I'm looking to you to see, is that, are you comfortable with that? Do you think we need to have another meeting between now and the final meeting of this group in May to finalize that memo to go to council in June? Really just kind of open to your thoughts and what you think you need. I want to make sure that you have enough information to provide information for the memo, and want to be cognizant of your time as well. But happy to meet again, provide more information, drill down on any particular projects.
Is the Open Records Act implicated? I mean, can we discuss the memo by email or do we have to meet in person? Like how?
Yeah, if there's any discussion via email, it would be subject to Cora and it would be considered a meeting. So it is best if we can meet in person in a meeting to discuss the memo. I know that was a question last year too.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about another, I got your email. You said we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday, May 8th.
Yes.
That's the next meeting of this
Yes.
committee. And then June 11, we can council presentation. You're saying, do we need another meeting between now and May 8th?
One thing you could do is Tiffany, put together a draft or however that works, you could give her feedback. That would not be a violation of open. Everything we do is subject to core requests. It could be, disclosable, but drafts actually have some ability to be retained, draft work. And so, working on a final product, the final product will be, subject, but the drafts may not be. We'll yield our expert attorneys to make those decisions. But if you wanted to do some, editing on your own between meetings, you could send Tiffany any feedback you have.
Did what he just said about, are you planning on writing a draft of it that we could then finesse?
So last year, y'all drafted it, Julie drafted it, and then we brought it back on that second meeting. So in this case, she would draft something and bring it on May 8th, and then we would discuss it and kind of finalize what we want that to look like, and then I could share it with the group after that.
Great.
It'd be helpful to see last year's memo before we make that decision, just to know sort of the framework.
Sure. Do we want to pass it out just so you have a paper copy?
I think what we the intent we took on the memo last year was just to answer kind of the questions that were directed to us with the charter of saying, we reviewed it with staff to understand it, and was it were the funds used basic buildings within kind of the spirit of 3A.
Yeah, right.
That last year, there wasn't a ton of spending, so there wasn't a lot to really
Yeah.
specifically report on. I don't know if with this year, we want to be a little bit more specific or not. I'm assuming, well, this kind of, Tiffany, do you expect something like this to be reported to the council, or I think,
If you'd like, yeah.
I mean, I think they were fine, if I remember right, with the memo. Because we came and presented last year and I think they asked a few questions. We had some of the discussion on the IT monies. Do you think there's anything from you guys' interactions as staff that the council might want to see in here? Or do you think just something similar might be?
I don't know that council provided any feedback to us. I don't know if you're aware of anything. I don't see any concern in adding this list. Do you, Mike?
No.
I mean,
Just point out, if the idea is you're gonna show up to the meeting and like, hey, here's the memo, let's review it live in the meeting. I would turn this into a bullet list, just so that it's easy to scan live and people can easily like follow along with. I know that I'm not trying to get like super prescriptive, but it would be really useful to make it scannable. Like,
yeah, I will say the headings in the memo last year, so executive summary is more for you. How funds were spent, expenditures out of ballot, language, recommendations, concerns, those are kind of verbatim from the charter for this committee on what we will share back with council, and so that's kind of why we have them in that format, but totally can.
oh no, I like these, I think having, you already have it broken up with, you've got some like wayfinding, right, how funds are spent. I'm just saying that inside of that.
It's your memo.
I guess the only thing I kind of am not sure about is how much detail we want to get into numbers, because I think we kept it fairly high level. I don't know if I feel comfortable with kind of making this into a 40-page memo. You know, I think just the high level is kind of what they need to say. We went through it, we understood what was coming in, what was spent out. I think the other thing we just noted was that, you know, we looked through that 5-year and 10-year plan,
Yeah.
noting that kind of what the anticipation is for the funds to be spent, look in line kind of with this, with the verbiage. So we kept it kind of simple.
Yeah.
So we can continue that too.
I mean, I'll say on the planning commission, we have a lot of documents with a lot of tables and a lot of numbers, whether they're traffic studies or site plans. And as a commissioner, I think it's really helpful to have the big, sort of the big ticket laid out, like just give me the sort of bottom line. And as a council member, I think it'd be useful if this memo had sort of like the current 3A budget for 2023 was this spending on 5 million for this, 10 million and this amount. And in 2024, we expect this amount would be spent, like downtown will get 10 million. Just the big picture outline. So council knows at a glance what the 3A money is going to. Doesn't have to be super detailed, but not so high level and just sort of glossing that we're following along with the general structure of 3A's bid. But to kind of give them that picture, you give them this.
Maybe you could use the categories that are on.
Something like that, and just maybe even just the more important ones. They don't need to know about FF&E and all that detailed stuff, but.
You want the $314 in there?
Nothing like that, but just to kind of where we've been, where it's going this year, and what 2024, maybe 2025 is looking like, where we expect the revenues to come in and where we think they're gonna go. Because as a council member, they do not have time to look at these kind of documents. I mean, we are luckily.
Yeah, that's why we kept it
But
simple.
we probably should summarize for them, and that ultimately is a summary for the public. It goes into the public record, and they have a better sense of what 3A money is doing. But I just was gonna say, I think it shouldn't be too glossed. There should be a level of specificity, maybe just at the highest level. I know I would appreciate that, as somebody on board with looking at this, and I'd just rather get it laid out.
Well, I think you could use these expenditure categories, the kind of total numbers, that right column,
What page are you looking at?
page 13. And those categories align with the colorful spreadsheet, which council is familiar with. That's what we refer to it as. So that would be that connection, I think, there for council and for the community. So that would be a suggestion. We'll do it that way.
Yeah, I can throw that together. I think where I might need help is if we want to, kind of back to John, your comment, And this may be more something for the communication for the big things happening, of like the specifics of where these things are happening, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't want it to make it, I don't want us to turn into a total accounting to the.
Yeah.
I just, but yeah, so what I will do is I'll put together the executive summary. We'll put together, so I'll kind of do some bullet points there. I'll put together kind of a quick, easy to read bullet point of money coming in, out. You know, if we saw any expenditures, I'll just put no there, but if people have concerns, we can talk about that later. You guys have to digest. And then, we didn't have any recommendations per se, but I think under additional comments, we talked about looking at that 10-year plan and, you know, just some general summary of the discussion here. And then can I send that draft to you? And then will you send that out to everybody before the next meeting? Okay,
We can kind of
It'll be part of the.
workshop it, give you some feedback.
okay.
If there was any left in the meeting.
When's our next meeting? May 7th? Is that?
Wednesday, May 8th.
May 8th. Try to hit every Wednesday I possibly could.
You gotta think for Wednesday.
It's about the only time we have space here at the city center.
Oh, wow, okay,
It's Wednesdays.
okay.
Forget Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yeah. No Friday nights,
On Friday nights.
Excitement.
You probably have room on Friday nights. You want to get Mike and Brent here.
And I would even say if you don't get to a final conclusion on the 8th, we could always add another meeting before June 11th when we meet with council.
True, it's almost a month.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have some time
true,
in
yeah.
between. If you needed more info or wanted to have another meeting. Totally open to that.
And then we can decide who wants to present. That has a hankering, or
You did it last year, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'll have to do it
I
again.
think there was our friend from the Transportation Mobility,
Yeah.
our rep, who the board came to.
So you don't present, somebody from the committee.
No, this is your memo, your committee, so you.
And it's actually your board. We changed the name this year from committee to board.
What does that do? I mean, what does that mean to the layperson like me?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
we're-
when
we're
you
just
hear.
Advisory, right? We don't.
So when you hear the word commission now, it implies a quasi judicial, so a group that meets in there and makes decisions that could have legal ramifications for both applicants as well as the city. When you hear the word board, it's advisory only,
Okay,
but it's ongoing. When you hear the word committee, it's advisory and it's temporary, time-stamped, like you deliver a product and then that committee, dissolves.
understood.
So we decided to use semantics to try to help breed more familiarity and comfort with how we use this in boards and panels.
The quasi judicial one is just planning, right?
Historic Preservation Commission and
Board of Appeals.
the Appeals and Adjustments.
Oh, actually, more than I
Division
thought.
of Appeals and Adjustments. Am I missing one?
I'm missing one, but I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there's one other one out there.
Oh, the library one?
Arts and Culture is a board.
It's a board now. It was, they had a commission, but then it switched the name.
Yeah.
There's another one, Mike, I swear there is.
There's some property rights.
Yeah, but the goal was to make it more clear. So at first it's a little confusing as we change things, but in the coming years, hopefully residents will know, hey, I want to be part of that and yeah.
Understood.
Great.
Cool, thanks.
It was the council that did that. So.
Yeah, I knew they were talking about
Messenger.
that. Yeah, no, that's helpful to understand. Thank you.
The other thing with boards is we no longer will have actions, so we won't have minutes. So that's why we record this. This will be our record. So that, in the past, we had moved to approve the minutes, those kind of things. But now all the advisory boards, their record is just a video recording. And in theory, you guys, some of you, if you were not available to attend a meeting, but you could have virtual, we could give you a link and join. As of now and for the foreseeable future, the public would not have access to virtual joining a meeting. But if one of you, like when Tiffany says the invite says, oh, I'm gonna be traveling, but I'm still interested in doing this. If you're traveling, enjoy wherever you're at. But if you wanted to join, you could.
I mean, we should be moving. This is probably sacrilegious to say, but we learned during COVID that we can run these things, and if you're mobility impaired, but you still want to serve the city.
Exactly.
Just Makes sense.
So that access is available in those circumstances. I will say that our council still is very leaning towards wanting you to be together. They think there's value in connecting in person. They think there's value in having meetings that the public can come and observe and watch. But I think your point is really valid. We need to be accessible to every member of our community. It's a big deal.
There are two other commissions, just FYI, the Election Commission
That's right.
and the Licensing Commission.
That's right.
Those guys.
Thank you. And the license commission is really important because they.
There's 5 or 6.
They approve licenses, whatnot. The election commission is required by our city charter. And so they meet very infrequently, sometimes not even at all during the course of a year. And even when they do, there's some question about the value that's provided, but our charter requires them to exist, so they exist.
Wow.
They're the Emeritus Commission.
Yes. Thank you for.
I just looked it up on the website, but I knew there was a couple more there that you just don't think of them.
That's right.
All right. Well, sorry.
Okay, is everyone in agreement on the direction for Julie for the memo?
I'm sorry that Julie's been drafted.
I've got the draft from last year.
All right, cool.
We're like Navy SEALs. We go, we do, we conquer, then we go have a beer.
Excellent.
Love
Love it.
All right, well, I think with that, we are adjourned and we will see everyone